I'm going to stop you there, Peg, if that's okay. So do you remember that the super progress you made in the last week? We were kind of targeting that just endlessly negative rawmation that you kind of go on with, and that is the thing that has really isolated you from others, Peg, isn't it, love?
Tommy or Gould, Tara Nilion.
That's comedy troupe CC Cahoots imagining what Peg Sayers might be like if she was in therapy. For years, her autobiography was synonymous with the Leaving Cert, but it's no longer on the exam. To find out what is, I'm joined by Moonshore Séadhan De Poire from the Dublin Academy of Education. Séadhan, will you talk us through paper 2, please?
Yeah, no problem at all. It's great to be back. So Irish paper 2 starts off with 2 reading comprehensions, Ceist Bhur Hain. From there we move to Ceist Bhur Do, which is the prose section. Ceist Bhur 3 would be the filiocht, would be the poetry, and finally we have the Litríocht Bhreise, would be your extra literature question. So 4 different elements of the exam. Most importantly probably is the reading comprehensions.
So question 1, talk to me through about that, because what they're looking for is kind of straightforward.
Oh, it's really straightforward. It's probably the best answered question throughout paper 1 and paper 2. Students love it. Doesn't matter what ability you are in Irish, you'll do well pretty much in the reading comprehensions. There are 2 comprehensions. You have 90 minutes. Well, that's what I would recommend. You have 90 minutes to get them done. You have 5 paragraphs in each comprehension, and you have 3 questions per paragraph. So A, B1, B2. And for those answers, for questions 1 to 5, I want you to copy and paste. What I mean by that is, look at the question, find what it says in the comprehension, don't make any changes at all, and put it back on paper exactly the same way it is in the comprehension. So it's copy and paste essentially.
But then in question 6b, it says Ida Uckle Féin.
Oh, those, famous 3 words. You'd be shocked the amount of people, when I'm correcting exams in the summer, that go and take the question 6b directly from the comprehension. So much so that over the years they've actually changed Ida Uckle Féin to be in bold writing in it. They've changed the text in it because people don't listen. It's basically an opinion question. You've read comprehension, you're reading about maybe a social issue going on in Ireland, and they ask you to express your own opinion on what's going on. And to do that, you have to use your own Irish. You are, of course, allowed to rob a couple of words from the text, but you're not allowed to rob full sentences. You must put your own stamp on affairs. So that's the same for both comprehensions, basically.
So 90 minutes on that. Yeah. It's the most marks going for it.
Yeah, it's 100 marks, which is about 16.7% of the exam. And students will do very well in this. They'll be very happy to see this. I just think it's quite a fair question for students, and it's a really nice way to start the exam. I would highly recommend that all students start with this. This is worth 50% of the marks on Irish paper 2, so I wouldn't leave the biggest mark question to the end of the exam. I would do it straight away, 45 minutes for each, and that'll set you off to a fine start.
So then question 2, the prose question. Talk to me about this one.
Yeah, so the exam has become a little bit simpler since the COVID amendments. We have 5 prose to study. However, because we have choice on the paper now, 2 pieces will appear and you will have to answer on 1. Because of that, we only have to study 4 pieces of prose. There's 3 in particular that I'm really focusing on this year with my students. Those 3 would be Her Lamabuk, Tír na Nóg and Cock and Millish. I'm not looking at Ganarad in great detail, and I'm also not looking at Deesh in great detail. I would still look at it, I would teach it, but I wouldn't be focusing in on it as it has appeared 2 years in a row, which is very, very unusual. So they'd be the 3 I'd be looking at. It's a 30 mark question. You have 25 minutes to answer it, and typically you should be writing, I would say, anywhere between 1.5 pages and 2 pages for the very best students who are looking to secure top marks. What should you be writing about? Typically these questions focus on character analysis and character behaviour. So that's one of the things I hammer home to my students, don't write a summary. Ordinary level Irish, do the same topics, and we ask them to write summaries of events. For a Leaving Cert higher level Irish, you are there to discuss what happens in the piece and you're there to answer the question. So you might learn a summary and it might have the right bits of information in it, but if you don't try address the question and use the correct information to answer the question, you're not going to do particularly well. I think the average grade for a summary, a very good summary, gets about 16 or 17 out of 30, which is not very good.
So you say to use examples though in your answer rather than a summary. So what are those examples?
So for example, let's say if I just focus on Tír na Nóg this year. So you might get a question about doing an analysis of the character of Uisín, the main character, and you'd be asked to describe him as a Dina Grov or a loving person, Dina Dealish as a loyal person. So you'd look for examples in the piece. Where is he loving? Well, he clearly loved his wife Niamh. He spent 300 years happily married to her. Obviously.
Marriage made in heaven there.
Absolutely. He had 3 children with her. He did anything for her on the way to Tír na Nóg. He stopped and fought a battle to prove his love for her. Then you also would have the examples of him being loyal, that although he left left his tribe and he left Na Fianna, he cried as he did that. And then when he returned to Ireland many years later, seeing that they had all passed away, he was upset by that. And then eventually in the end, that he announces himself as Misha Ushina Nia Na Fianna, I'm Ushina, descendant of Na Fianna, from Na Fianna. So there's just examples there that we can use to prove that he's loving and loyal, and we don't just have to go, here's the part A of the story all the way to the end. So I just want bits from the story that help you answer the question. I don't need all of it.
And then question 3 is the poetry section. So what can students expect to be asked about here?
So the poetry question has typically been split into 3 separate questions. Question 1 is a 15-mark question. Question 2 tends to be a 6-mark question, and question 3 is a 9-mark question. They're all focusing on poetic techniques for the most part. So question 1 for 15 marks typically is, I find, a lot of time about images, contrast or theme, but it's just disguised with different words. So if I use the example of Culscara this year, Culscara would be a poem that a lot of students would hope to appear this year. Like they might say Tá Difric the Ulvora or Tá Jacric the Codger le Fecal, that there's huge differences or there's relationship difficulties to be seen. That's a contrast question. They're basically asking you, Culscara, sorry, I should have said means divorce. They're asking you to show why these 2 people in the poem got divorced. So it's a theme kind of contrast question. The 6-mark questions tend to focus on smaller answers. So you'd have a question about how the poem impacted you, what's the strongest emotion, what did you think of the title, what did you think of the ending. They'd be very 4 typical 6-mark questions. And usually, not in all the poems, but usually you will get a 9-mark question about the life and the works that the poet has produced. So what I'm looking for there is the name of the poet. If that's wrong, you get 0. Okay. If you get the name of the poet right, and then you want maybe 2 sentences about the poet's life and 2 sentences about other works that the poet has composed.
Okay, so what poems are you tipping to come up, and how long should people write for this question?
Okay, so let's go. What would students love to see? Culscara is what everyone wants to see. Culscara is the only poem that hasn't appeared in the exam in the last 2 years, and if all is right in the world, Culscara will appear and there'll be a lot of happy students.
Come on, Culscara!
Exactly. Apart from that, I'd probably be looking at Magrasa and at Spalpeen Fánach. They're the 3 that didn't appear last year, so they're the 3 I would definitely have a look at. And if I was to look at one other poem, I feel that probably the favourite poem of most teachers and maybe people who set the exams is probably An Tara Céart. It's the nicest poem to listen to. Martin O'Dearon's the poet. His work has been on this Leaving Cert course. It's on the next Leaving Cert course. It's been on the old Junior Cert. It's on the new Junior Cert. So they love his work. So if they were to repeat a poem, which hasn't happened again, I think they would go with An Tara Céart. And I should say, for the length of answers, for your 15-mark answer, about a page and a half. 6-mark answer, 6 sentences. And your 9-mark answer, give or take about 6 sentences also. And in total, you should spend about 30 minutes on that question.
Okay, so the last question then, question 4. This is the extra literature question.
That's it.
What's the approach here?
It depends what you're doing. There's loads of different options on it. The 2 that are most popular, from my experience of correcting the exams, are On Trial. Wouldn't be the happiest story in the world. And
no,
then
I did that one. Yeah.
And you have a Hignagh Hitcher, which is definitely more upbeat. I'll start with On Trial first of all. I like On Trial because I feel it's tried and tested, and I don't think, once you know the storyline, it revolves around one character, obviously, which is Moira and her demise and her downfall. So for sample questions here, typically I get my students to look at Moira's life, start to finish, her character arc, what happens to her. Not quite a summary mentioning every detail, but pick 5 or 6 people she meets along the way in her life who ultimately don't help her and make her life worse. Another question you would look at is society as a whole in Ireland, and the 2 words they'd be looking for is a hypocritical society or a cruel society. Feminach would be hypocritical, cruálach would be cruel. So describing, it's a very similar question to what we just spoke about. They're describing how the people she meets along the way in Ireland are cruel and hypocritical, and that their behaviours aren't really shaped by kind of treating people well, more that the fear of what the church would say about them. And then finally, the last question will be about Porrick. Porrick is the man who causes Moira's pain, disappears for a while and shows up at the end and causes a bit more trouble as well. So I would have an answer prepared on him. They're the 3 questions that I look at for An Trial year in, year out with my students, and yeah, it tends to go pretty well with them ones. When looking at a Hignagh Hitcher, I wouldn't be an expert at this one as I don't really teach it. I would know bits of it from correcting about it, but typically it's about an autobiography about Mike Danine O'Shea. And what I'd be telling students to look at there is typically about music, sport, his youth, his time in school, and then the life of the Gaeltacht people. There's 5 elements, and when you look back over the past paper questions, there's always a mix of 1 or 2 of those elements put in together and give examples from the story. And the key thing is with those 2 questions there, I want you to give me examples of character behaviour. That's the biggest thing in Irish paper too. Talk about character behaviour. and link it to the words of the question. Summaries are no good. Summaries won't get you the marks that you want. You could learn a fantastic summary with all the right points, but if you don't attempt to answer the question, I'm not able to award you any marks, really. So that'd be my advice there.
Okay, and then spelling and grammar in this exam, how important is it?
Nothing like Irish paper 1. Irish paper 1 basically is all spelling and grammar. You know, there's 80 marks for your quality of Irish. We spoke at that previously. In this question here, question 2, the prose, question 3, the poetry, and question 4, what we've just spoken about there, they all have a hidden 5 marks for grammar. So if it says it's worth 40 marks, it's actually worth 35, and 5 marks go for the quality of your Irish. I would say to students, the biggest thing that will stop you doing well with Irish on Irish paper 2 and your language ability is incorrect sentence structure. If I can't understand your sentence structure, it doesn't matter what keywords are there, I don't know what you're saying. A shavu missing here or a misword spelt there that isn't terribly misspelt, you'll get away with it, you'll still do pretty well. Now, you don't want to see it throughout the piece, but in my opinion, poor sentence structure using is instead of ta or vice versa, or starting a verb with the past tense meaning to speak in the present tense, that is far worse for you and your grade. So keep your sentence structure good, make sure I can understand your points, and I'm happy to award your marks.
You have a key tip for doing well in this exam, and it's saying it's about the number of nouns and adjectives you should have for each answer.
Yeah, so when you look at each individual piece, there's no point having like a list of 20 nouns for Irish paper 2. You treat every story or poem as an individual piece. And I tell my students, if you have 20 nouns and 10 adjectives for each piece, because the verbs are always the same, we see, we look, we understand, we get. So if you have 20 nouns and 10 adjectives for each piece, you will be able to put sentences together. Even if you've prepared something and you kind of have forgotten it, if you've got those 20 keywords, those 10 adjectives, you can build sentences and then you can answer the question with that. So that's what I tell my students. If all else fails, the night before the exam, make those list of words as your backup.
Okay. And lastly, Shane, so you say definitely start with question 1 because the most marks are going there. Does it matter what order you do the other questions in?
No, it doesn't really matter. Definitely start with the comprehensions. They're worth most marks. After that, I tell my students, do the question that suits you best. If you're really good at Culscara, and Culscara has appeared in this exam, go on to the one you're best at. My only bit of advice would be, please make sure you do finish the paper. Don't go, start with question 1, do question 3, do question 4, and think, that's great, I'm after finishing up here, and off you go 25 minutes early. Just make sure you do answer all the questions, and if you do that, you'll be happy as Larry.